To me, when you think about selling as something you do for people, it's because you're becoming an advocate for the client, right? You're almost an extension of their team, and you're not going to close a sale and say, there you go, and shut the door and be on your way. If you feel like it's more of a transaction, the client probably feels that too, and no one's going to really feel good at the end of it.
This is Mental Selling, the sales podcast for people who are dedicated to making a difference in customers' lives. We're here to help you unlock sales talent, win more relationships, and transform your business with integrity. I'm your host, Haley Parr. Let's get right into it. Hello, welcome to Mental Selling, where we dive deep into the strategies, mindsets, and innovations shaping the world of sales today. I'm your host, Haley Parr, and in this episode, we're exploring a topic that's at the heart of every truly successful sales professional, and a word I've gotten to know pretty well in the last couple of months: integrity. Joining us is Mike O'Brien, EVP of Sales at Integrity Solutions, the company we've both recently joined that's been helping sales teams build trust, deliver value, and create meaningful customer relationships for decades. Mike brings a wealth of experience and a fresh perspective on what it truly means to sell with integrity, how honesty, authenticity, commitment to client success, and the keen ability to listen aren't just ethical choices, but also powerful business drivers. In this conversation, we'll unpack why integrity in sales isn't just about doing the right thing. It's about creating lasting success for both sellers and buyers. We'll discuss practical ways to build trust, overcome the misconception that sales is all about persuasion rather than partnership, and how a values-driven approach can set you apart in today's competitive market. If you're in sales, leadership, or simply someone who believes in doing business the right way, this episode is for you. Let's dive right in. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Haley. How are you?
I'm doing well. Happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Well, Mike, I've gotten to know you pretty well over the past 2 months as we both started this journey with Integrity Solutions at the same time as a cohesive sales and marketing function. So it's clear that sales is in your blood. You've had a long, successful career. I'd love to learn more about your journey and what initially drew you to sales.
Yeah, it's a different one. For most folks, they kind of start in sales and they spend their entire career in sales. I had a little bit of a different journey. I started in the marketing background with a lot of time in product management as well. So I got to know different parts of the business long before I got into sales. I was supporting sales for much of that process, and whether it was building products to kind of solve new client needs or supporting from a marketing perspective with more product level marketing. I spent a lot of time just working with the sales team to help evangelize our message. And every time I got a chance to jump in front of a client or be on a sales call, I really felt something unique and something missing from what I was doing. And I was able to make that jump into sales after a number of years in the other parts of the business. And I just got bit by the sales bug. I love working with clients. I love giving them solutions that fixes their challenges and build long-term relationships, right? There's just so many highs that you get out of the sales function. And it's somewhat intoxicating as a salesperson when you see those wins and those experiences. So it's been great over the course of the last 20 years or so being in this area, both as a salesperson, as a sales manager, whether it's been inside sales, outside sales, channel sales operations, you name it. Like, I've just enjoyed every part of those different functions and roles. And together, you think about one of the things I say all the time, Haley, is everybody's in sales, right? And you think about the organization, everybody has a chance to impact the client in some way, regardless of which part of the business you're in. The sales team in particular has a chance to take the face position to the client, but everybody else touches clients in different ways around the business. And that's something I really try to make sure everybody's aware of.
That's awesome, Mike. A couple things you said really stuck out to me around building partnerships with sales and solving problems. And you clearly have experience that runs the gamut. So it almost sounds antithetical to some of the negative perceptions that people have about sales. How would you redefine what it truly means to be a salesperson, to go against the grain of all the bad reps out there?
Yeah, it's funny how the connotation of salesperson has evolved. A lot of us think of sales as people that are trying to sell you something you don't need. And it, depending on the industry you're in, it has different connotations. But in general, you think about perception of sales as something that you really want to overcome on day one as a salesperson, right? The first time you pick up a phone or get in front of a client in a meeting, you want to basically put them at ease that you're not there in that negative perception that they may or may not have. But you want to basically establish that credibility, establish that rapport, establish that baseline, and start to build trust, right? Because as
Mhm.
soon as you have that in place, it's completely dismantles any perceptions that they might have. When they realize that you're really an advocate for them and you're listening and you're doing a lot of playback of what they're telling you, they'll understand that you're there on their behalf. And I think that's what's really changing from an industry perspective, and something that I strive to do myself and try to coach the sales teams that I've worked with to think about that mindset and really kind of look right away to debunk any concerns or fears that the client might have, that you're there to sell them something they don't need.
That's really important. And one word you mentioned really stuck out to me as something you don't hear in the same sentence as this salesperson persona, and that's trust, which is really at the core of strong relationships. So you talked about coaching your team through ways to build that trust, but what are some of those practical ways your salespeople and reps can build, maintain trust with their prospects and clients over time?
Yeah, I think of it as kind of like, I'm a baseball person, so I think about baseball analogies. Like, you're not
Mhm.
typically starting, off the trying to hit a home run with building trust, right? You want to do it through small at bats, singles, doubles. You find ways to build that credibility, whether it's a tasteful supply of success stories or references that might be really helpful to the client to see that other folks have found real success working with you in the past, providing resources that might be helpful as part of their buying journey, whether it's downloading resources or playbooks or things like that that they can read and become a little bit more informed. Because you think about it, there's so much information that's out today for clients to find long before they ever pick up the phone and speak to a
Mhm.
salesperson. You want to try to make sure you're helping them navigate that process, right? So building trust really is kind of like an ongoing thing, but knowing that you're starting from zero, you don't want to try to be a hero right up front. But I think if you can find some ways to quickly add some trust and kind of build that up over time, it will serve you further down the road and building long-term relationships. So that's the way I think about it. And, it could
Mm.
mean different things for different clients. But in the end, I think if you're there without trying to overwhelm them up front and do all that, look how great we are, by putting out all your prior wins and successes, you're trying to look for ways that you can be meaningful and impactful to them. And one of the ways that I think I always try to look at it, Haley, is put yourself in the client's position and look through their lens and how they might be looking at you. And that's when you kind of start to think, oh, I bet if I were in that role, I'd be thinking this. And therefore, I can think about a tool or a resource or some value to create that'll build trust and help them along.
That's great, Mike. And I've definitely heard some of those baseball metaphors in the
Yeah.
past couple of months at Integrity Solutions. So I'm glad that that works to translate over to the coaching things that you're working with your team. Hi there. If you're listening to this show, it means you believe in making a difference in your customers' lives and are looking for tools to grow in your career at the same time. At Integrity Solutions, we're changing the stereotypes about sales training in ways your customers will feel and experience every day. If you want to learn more about how we could help you and your team, go to integritysolutions.com. Another thing that I've heard quite often in this seat and working with the Integrity Solutions folks is selling is something you do for people, not to them. What does that mean to you? How does that philosophy shape the way you approach sales?
Yeah. I love this because I had not heard this phrase before coming to Integrity.
Yeah.
And when I heard it, I fell in love with it. I'm like, this is great. Like, this is exactly, what you wanted to think about from a sales perspective that you really have been striving for your whole career, but you never really put the words on paper to underscore that. But
Yeah.
to me, when you think about selling as something you do for people, it's because you're becoming an advocate for the client, right? You're almost an extension of their team because in the long run, you want to build long-term relationships. You want to help them along this journey, this buying process of solving the challenges they have and understanding their needs and helping them map your solution to their needs. It's something you're doing with them, not to them. You're not going to close a sale and say, there you go, and shut the door and be on your way. You think about really the value that you create for them that hopefully establishes you as a relationship and a trusted advisor for the long haul. Because the cost of acquisition for a new customer is very high. I think we know
Hmm.
that. And the retention of existing clients is key, right? You need to make sure that you're building that long-term base so that they keep coming back and looking to you for answers when they have questions about other things that you might be able to help with. So if you feel like it's more of a transaction, the client probably feels that too, and no one's going to really feel good at the end of it. So that's what you kind of think about when you think about that phrase, selling something that you do
Yeah.
for people, not to them. Yeah.
Well, and that's not an easy thing to do either, right? Especially with conflicting, priorities and quotas to meet. And it can really kind of lead to a slippery slope of potentially bad behaviors. So I'm curious, have you ever faced a situation where integrity was tested and how did you navigate that?
Yeah, I think salespeople run into that frequently. At least it's tested all the time because let's face it, as sales folks, you're there to deliver results to the organization that you're selling for, right? You need to put
Hmm.
points on the board. Sometimes there's high pressure to sell a new product, or there's high pressure to sell something that you haven't sold before. And oftentimes you're looking really hard for ways to sell that to clients. And you might find that there's a client that doesn't need it, doesn't need something that you're selling. And you're sort of in that position of, well, I could really press this and push it and potentially sell them something that's not going to be of value down the road. And they'll probably be disappointed. And I think I've run into that. I know I've had that experience early in my career. And it's that dissonance that you get when you're trying to sell something. You're like, this isn't the right fit for them. Or maybe it's something you don't believe in. If it's a product you're selling that you're not fully vested in, that can be the same type of situation. But I think you navigate it by being true to form for what you're doing for clients, right? You make sure that when you're connecting with them, you're understanding their needs, you're mapping the solution. If it isn't a good fit, they will love you if you tell them that, hey, this isn't a good fit, but here's what you might want to consider, and build that long-term relationship to say, you can trust me in the future and I'll steer you correctly, when the time comes. But generally speaking, you're going to run into it a lot as a salesperson, but knowing when to sell, what to sell, and
Hmm.
feeling good about the sale for the long term is really critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine too that it's more
Yeah.
difficult earlier on in your sales career when you haven't built up the confidence and you don't have as much product knowledge. You wouldn't consider yourself a subject matter expert. So, what are some ways that you would coach maybe earlier career reps or just, new to the field sales professionals on
Yeah.
selling with authenticity and confidence rather than the pressure manipulation or just some of those other forces that they might be feeling just to perform.
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind really quickly here. Number one is don't think of it as going to market with a solution in search of a problem. The more you think about spending time upfront with clients and listening to them, listening to their
Mm.
needs, rather than saying, "Hey, I've got a solution, you need to hear about it." Start to ask the discovery questions. Start to get the dialogue going. Learn about what the client's going through. Do that heavy listening up front. As Haley, that's a big part of what we do in Integrity Solutions and our products is we really try to think about it from the customer's view up front and really learn a lot and listen in the beginning. Secondly, having a passion for what you're selling, having a passion for what you're doing, belief in your products, authenticity and confidence comes natural with that, right? If you're truly selling something that you fell in love with, you know the value, you are excited to talk about it, it'll just come out, right? And
Mhm.
you won't feel that need to manipulate the message. You won't feel like the pressure's there because frankly, you have a story to tell, you're excited to tell it, and you want to make sure that it's mapped to the clients that are going to be best, in position to respond to it. So it's really an art form for young folks coming into the field to think about in getting going. You spend a lot of time up front learning the products, you spend a lot of time up front learning what to say. But in reality, it's so much of it is learning how to listen and learning how to map what you're selling and what you're passionate about and having the customer understand it and connect those dots right along with you.
Got it. Active listening. I hear you there for sure. And it's definitely another one of those things that's way more difficult than it
Mhm.
sounds. So something that you have to be intentional and continue to work on. What are some of those other skills that modern salespeople really need to master to be successful in today's market with all the change and
Yeah.
automation and everything else going on? It's not easy.
There's a couple that I think will complement. So we talked about listening skills, right? That's certainly one. There's a couple more that I think are going to be really fan favorites, and I'll give you one that probably won't be, but it's also a skill that is really
Ooh, okay.
critical. First one I'll add on to this is assertiveness, right? Salesperson needs to be assertive. They need to be able to control the tempo of the sale and make sure that things are moving and there's a consistent pacing,
Mm.
not to the point where you're becoming a nuisance or a detriment, but also making sure that you're keeping the client's conversations alive and in play. Because as things stagnate and things kind of lose momentum, the chances of sales success drop significantly, right? So
Mm.
being
Uh-huh.
assertive to drive conversations, to keep pace, keep tempo is really important. The next one is, the ability to build relationships, right? From a new business perspective, it's having that ability to establish quick rapport, find a way to connect really quickly because you're there for the beginning part of the relationship, and oftentimes organizations structure it that new business then transitions into account management. The account manager's there for the long-term relationship sale. But both of those have a little bit of an art to kind of building that rapport and maintaining it for the long term, but also kind of being able to establish it quickly. The one that comes to mind that most people hate, and
I can't
it's
wait for
one of those,
this.
yeah, it's one of those necessary evils you have in sales, though, is keeping track of your data, your information, your CRM, your KPIs. They're there for a reason. Nobody likes them. As a salesperson, I remember hating keeping track. Oh, I got to make X more calls today, or I need to open up this many opportunities this month. They're there for a reason, and it's important to remember that all those things are there because they are giving you guardrails or guideposts for where you should be thinking about your volume in your business. It kind of keeps you on pace
Mhm.
and keeping things current in your CRM system, your opportunity pipeline, your conversations. All of those things serve a really important role and are going to be vital not only to the sales process, but what folks tend to forget, and this is the product person coming out of me because I've been in this role as well. The rest of the organization depends on the information you're putting into the CRM system.
Mm.
They make product decisions, they make marketing decisions, and it's so key, right? Because you think about yourself as the tip of the sword for client facing conversations, but bringing that information back in, putting it into a system that's accessible and available to other folks in the business that are dying for that information is really critical. So I think that's important for sales folks to think about the big picture because it's easy to kind of think of it as just the sales lens, but the business really operates from a lot of the information that we get as salespeople in front of clients.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective of taking a wider lens on the more tactical aspects of a sales performance management process, like KPIs and dashboards and
Hmm.
revenue targets. So,
Hmm.
how do you define success in sales beyond some of those really objective, hitting your target type of activities?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in general, folks will say if I can point to hitting my quota, or exceeding quota, that's a win
Mhm.
for sure, right? There's definitely going to be metrics and measures that will kind of give people confidence and feel like they've done some things. Other things that are maybe a little bit more intangible or a little bit in the shadows are imagine, for example, launching a brand new product, right? A
Yep.
salesperson has to take something that is new and novel, not only to the team, but to the client base that they have, and that's tough, right? Sometimes you've got your bread and butter products you've been selling for a long time. You've got these long-term relationships. And here you are with something that's brand new. And you're being asked to go out and create interest, create pipeline, and create sales. Sales folks that go through that cycle and can find some success and kind of point to early wins to drive momentum for the business is so valuable. And I've worked with sales folks in the past that have an aversion to it, right? Because they don't like that uncomfortableness. Other folks I work with are like, oh, this is great. I can't wait to be, one of the first people to bring this to market. We're going to learn so much from our first 10 or 15 clients or so. That success that you get lifts the organization in ways that sales folks can't even, fathom because you're launching something new. The product folks are dying to hear a client feedback. The marketing folks want to know how the messaging is landing and all that. So it's really one of those things that you can feel the success, and the organization will be so glad for the sales folks that can get some wins early, when it comes to new products.
You knew the marketer in me was going to perk up when you mentioned
Yeah.
messaging. I couldn't agree more. I think this is where sales and marketing alignment is so critical in that go to market strategy. And it's so refreshing to work with sales leadership that has that perspective. And so everyone's,
Mhm.
using the right words and messaging in the right way and aligned on strategy. It just really creates synergy in what we're bringing forward to market.
Mhm.
So
For
thank
sure.
you for that plug, Mike. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. If you could give a piece of advice to someone just starting out their sales career as a seasoned vet, what would that advice be?
When I think about where I started, this may not be for everybody, but some folks it comes really natural. If you're really someone that's great and you put yourself out there and you're very open, that's great. You're going to be a step ahead in sales, but don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to get outside your comfort zone. As I mentioned earlier, be assertive. Sign up for the hard work. That means putting in the time to do the prospecting work, making the calls that you get 99 no's and one yes, and you got to learn to feed off that one yes, right? That one yes is going to drive you for the next couple of weeks in some cases, but learn from the wins and the losses is the other
Mhm.
thing I would say, right? It's great to celebrate the wins. There's always something there to feel good about. What was the tipping point that landed this client? But also unpack the losses, right? Look at it as a stepping stone to get more wins. What could we have done differently in our sales process? What could we have done differently in our pitch to the customer? Maybe something we could do to nuance the product features, whatever that might be. Look for the things that you can learn from the loss because it will help you dramatically down the road and share it out with the organization.
Sage advice.
Yeah.
Look for the wins and the losses. There are definitely lessons to be learned in both. Mike, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for joining us on Mental Selling. Where can
You
people
bet.
learn more about your work? And do you have any final thoughts for sales professionals and beyond?
Oh, there's never final thoughts, right? I think sales is such a delight to be a part of. You can really impact a lot of lives in this part of the field. And I think it's great for folks to be thinking about their careers for the long haul because there's so many different things you can do as a salesperson, from complex sales to transactional sales, small business, enterprise, so many different things with so many different types of sales cycles and processes. But finding something that really kind of gets you up in the morning and gets you passionate about what you do is the key. Feeling really great about the products, feeling great about the market, feeling confident. All those things just give you such a boost as a salesperson. Finding more about integrity, certainly go to integritysolutions.com. Check us out. There's just so many cool products from, sales to service to coaching. We really do offer a lot to help folks in this part of their career build themselves up. And there's something for other parts of the organization as well, because as you know, Haley, we really offer a lot to help organizations as a whole, not just from a sales function.
We absolutely do. Thank you so much, Mike. We're all in sales, right?
You've heard me say that so
Yeah.
many times already, but it's like one of those mantras that I keep saying and I
Yep.
truly believe it. Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. And we will talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Haley.
Thanks. Thank you for joining us on Mental Selling. If today's conversation resonated with you, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. For more insights on how to go beyond winning deals and build real customer relationships, visit integritysolutions.com. See you next time.